The Baltimore Ravens and Los Angeles Rams take the field in week number 6. Both teams coming off of a big loss and looking to get some redemption.
Can the Rams get through an entire game without getting a kick blocked?
You are Locked On NFL Crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
You are Locked On Ravens and Locked On Rams. Welcome into the show on this Crossover Thursday. I'm your host, Kevin Oestreicher of Locked On Ravens. Alongside me is your other host, Travis Rogers of Locked On Rams. We're here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks so much for being here today on this Crossover Thursday, making Locked On Ravens and Locked On Rams a part of your day and your first listen each and every single day. Thanks out there to all the everydayers, the first-time listeners. If you're somewhere in the middle, thank you as well. We have 5 days a week of both Locked On Ravens and Locked On Rams here for you, covering the Ravens and Rams each and every single weekday. And we have a jam-packed episode today, diving into the biggest stories, key matchups, and how each team can win this pivotal Week 6 matchup. I want to tell everybody that today's Crossover Thursday edition of Locked On Ravens and Locked On Rams is presented by Prize Picks. Download the Prize Picks app today. Use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Travis, these two teams coming off of losses in week number 5 in a little bit different fashion. The Ravens got absolutely stomped by the Texans, while the Rams lost a heartbreaker to the San Francisco 49ers. Let's start with the Rams. They're coming to Baltimore. What's the biggest story in Los Angeles right now?
Well, I think the Rams are still trying to figure out exactly who they are. Are they a team that is a couple of blocked kicks away from being 5-0? Are they a team that squandered an opportunity against San Francisco in not one or two ways, but in maybe 5 or 6 different ways? Or are they the team that could easily be 1-4 and saying, what the heck is going on? This was supposed to be, a team that was going to contend for a playoff spot and maybe even better than that. And, not probably a little similar to how things are going with the Ravens, Kevin, as far as like, how did we get here? And they're somewhere in between. So I think that's the biggest one for the Rams, is trying to figure out exactly what sort of football team they have. It looked like they had a chance to get off to a good start. They still do. A win on Sunday would put them in a pretty good spot going into week 7, but they've played very, very strange football for a Sean McVay team. They've been sloppy. They've kind of handed some games away, which is typically not what McVay teams do.
Yeah, on the Ravens side of things, they're just trying to figure out who's going to be on the field for them on Sunday.
Yeah.
They've been ravaged with injuries. Obviously, the biggest story over the last couple of days have been the roster shakeup that Baltimore underwent on Tuesday. They bring in C.J. Gardner-Johnson to their practice squad, and they trade away pass rusher Odafe Oweh to the Chargers and get back Alohi Gilman in that deal, along with a pick swap in there. So the Ravens clearly sending a message that what's going on right now is not working. Clearly it is not. This is one of the worst defenses in Ravens franchise history. It's the worst defense in the NFL right now. They're bottom 5 in almost every single major statistical category. And, it just feels like, Travis, not only the field on the play is bad, but off of the field, the vibes are just not there right now. Whether that's the messaging isn't getting across the players. Every single TV cut, if you're watching the games on the broadcast, is cut to an ejected Raven, an injured Raven, a dejected coach is not great right now. And even heard Odafe Oweh, he had some comments after going over to Los Angeles. He spoke for the first time and kind of talked about how he was shocked by the move, and he kind of was bracing for something, but he said it's a good opportunity for him to show who he can be that wasn't really able to be shown with the Ravens. And, speaking of the Ravens pass rush, they haven't been great. Only 6 sacks on the season. Oweh was one of their better pressure players, although he didn't have a sack on the year. So this Ravens team has given up 37 points or more in 4 of their first 5 games. And it really seems like, Travis, these last couple of weeks, and even earlier than that, if you're a team that's struggling, if you're an offense that needs a little boost or needs to find yourself, if you're a team that's struggling with your identity, well, come on down to Baltimore and they'll get you right. That feels like what it is right now. What's the biggest thing in your mind, Travis, the Rams have to kind of figure out here?
Their kicking game, without a doubt. They've had 4 kicks blocked in 5 games. You shouldn't have 4 kick blocks in 4 seasons.
Right.
And they've had 4 blocked in 5 games. And it is inexplicable to me how it continues to happen, because this doesn't seem to me to be something that's that hard to get right. If you know what I mean, like kicks don't get blocked in the NFL very often. It just doesn't happen. And when something is getting blocked at a rate like this, there clearly is some sort of fundamental breakdown. They've swapped out some personnel in their kicking packages. It's still happening, which leads you to believe there's some sort of schematic thing that they're doing wrong that other teams have identified that the Rams have been unable to identify. So I think that's the biggest thing for them, because, you know, and you mentioned some of the defensive problems that Baltimore is having. The Rams are moving the ball. Matthew Stafford leads the league in passing yardage. Puka Nacua leads the league in receiving yardage. Devontae Adams, I think, is 12th or 13th. Kyron Williams is 6th in rushing. Like, the Rams are moving the ball. They're scoring points. They're doing what they're supposed to do. And then they're blowing their own foot off at the end of drives, at the end of halves. They're turning the ball over. And the biggest thing of all is, 2 kicks blocked in Philadelphia, 1 blocked last week against San Francisco. It's the little things like that. They're doing the big things right. They're just not getting the little things right.
Yeah, at least they're doing the big things right, because in Baltimore, they're doing nothing right now. Whether that be the sack numbers on defense, they're playing super soft in coverage right now. And the Ravens defensively, their scheme is they are by proxy a bend don't break defense. So they play guys deep, and they essentially don't allow those big plays down the field, those 50-yard throws, 60-yard throws down the line for big plays. What they do is they keep everything in front of them, and then by the time the opposing offense gets into maybe right outside the red zone, the Ravens 30-yard line, they'll tighten up and say, hey, we're going to force you to kick every single possession, which I guess is the right thing to do if you're playing the Rams, and you get a couple field goal blocks out there, and then you're off to the races. But the Ravens, they're not bend don't break this year. They're bend and then they snap. The last 2 games, the Ravens defense has been on the field for 20 possessions. They've forced 2 punts total in those 20 possessions. Wow. 1 punt in each game, and both punts have been in the fourth quarter with about 5 minutes left to go. So these teams are scoring at will, touchdowns, field goals, one of the worst third down defenses, one of the worst red zone defenses. And on top of that, the Ravens might not have Lamar Jackson again this week. It was a struggle without him last week. And Cooper Rush, who they signed from Dallas in the offseason, is just a different quarterback than Lamar. We know this Ravens offense without Lamar. I mean, he's the guy that makes the gears turn there. Sure. But hamstring injuries are tricky, and after this week, the Ravens have a bye, so it does make sense if something's still lingering to hold him out for this game. And even if that does mean you go 1-5, which would put them in a really, really bad spot, you don't want to risk Lamar coming back too early and then something gets worse there. So if Lamar doesn't play, there's a lot. It's not just Lamar either. A couple of new guys popped up on the injury report for the Ravens on Wednesday. Zay Flowers with a shoulder injury, Roger Rosengarten with a knee injury. Those 2 were limited. Who didn't practice outside of Lamar was Roquan Smith. Patrick Ricard hasn't played all season. Marlon Humphrey and Chidobe Awuzie. They're hoping that Ronnie Stanley and Kyle Hamilton can make it back for this game, but we'll have to see. How's the Rams injury situation looking right now?
They're pretty good. Omar Spates is probably not going to be available this week. He's they're one of their linebackers that they lean on a lot, which means, and Rams fans are going to get a cold shiver down their spine when I say this name, because this is somebody that they universally are not particularly fond of, is Troy Reeder. He's a guy that is a bit of a mark that if you can get him, singled up in some coverage and some favorable situations is usually not good for the Rams. But other than that, they lost to Killer Witherspoon early in the season. They're still struggling in their secondary a little bit. I think that if you put the kicking game aside and you talk about, the other guys, their corners are not very good so far this season. That you look at Darius Williams, he has been not very good. You look at Emmanuel Forbes, he has been not very good. You look at Kobe Durant, he has been not very good. So the Rams have this incredible front line and this pass rush, but Mac Jones just absolutely sliced and diced him last week. If you get the ball out fast, I don't care how good Jared Verse is, how many sacks Byron Young has, and those guys are playing some really good football, but nobody's getting home in a second. Nobody's getting home in a second and a half. If you can get the ball out quickly and you can't cover, then you're going to have some success. So I think that the Witherspoon injury is one of those things that at the time it's like, okay, not great, broken collarbone, so he's going to be gone for a long time. But I wouldn't be surprised if the Rams, Sean McVay kind of, hemmed and hawed a little bit when he was asked about whether or not they might make a move at that part in that part of their roster to try to upgrade some corner. And he didn't say yes or no. He said that they weren't considering it at the time, which is always a bit of a hedge. But I wouldn't be surprised to see him try to address something back there, because that's a soft spot for him for sure.
We have a lot coming up on this crossover Thursday edition of Locked On Ravens and Locked On Rams. We'll get into the matchups to watch next, both offensively and defensively for both of these teams. So stay tuned. We got plenty coming your way on both Locked On Ravens and Locked On Rams. First, this show is brought to you by Mazda. Mazda crafts cars for those who do more than simply move. Mazda delivers confidence with every ride, with more IAHS Top Safety Pick Plus awards than anyone else as of August 2025. From footwork to breathwork, athletes sweat all the details. Mazda brings the same intention to how they craft every model. You can feel Japanese craftsmanship in every detail, from the metallic accents to available Napa leather upholstery. You can make everyday drives feel like anything but, from smooth handling to intuitive controls. With all-wheel drive standard in every crossover SUV, you can drive with confidence through almost any season. Like our players, we sweat every detail, because when you make every move count, impossible becomes irrelevant. Mazda, move and be moved. Moving along on this crossover Thursday edition of Locked On Ravens and Locked On Rams, Kevin Oestreicher and Travis Rogers still talking with you about this pivotal Week 6 matchup. I think for different reasons. Ravens trying to avoid going down to 1-5 on the season, and the Rams, as Travis, you mentioned, they're looking to find themselves a little bit and figure out that kicking game. I think with these matchups, it's so hard to even pinpoint specific players, because the Ravens have so many guys that just literally might not play in this game. But off the top of your head, assuming that some of these guys are able to come back, even if it's just a positional group that you have, is there any specific area you're looking at and looking forward to in this game for both teams?
Well, I think one of the things that is a concern is kind of what we touched on a second ago, is that secondary. They have not figured out how to do that yet. And then when you add the injury of Omar Spates and what they're doing at linebacker, you have Jake Landman, who's been pretty good. He's not very good in coverage. That's not really what he's there to do. The Rams need to find a way to cover for a half a beat longer. They're getting some pressure. And what's really interesting, Kevin, is I think one of the things that the Rams thought that they would be pretty effective at is playing with a lead, and that hasn't turned out to be true, because their secondary is so bad that they're just not able to cover people. And even with that great pass rush, it's just not working out the way it does. On offense, the Rams have been pretty good. That Kyren Williams, I think, is, I don't know if this is a matchup exactly, but I'm really curious to see how he responds to yet another fumble that he had last week against the 49ers. Since the beginning of the 2023 season, he leads the league in fumbles lost. He's lost 7 of them. He's actually fumbled 10 times. They've gotten lucky and recovered 3 of them along the way. So he is officially a fumbler. That's just that's just the cold hard truth about that. Usually when he has one, he will bounce back with a game or 2 or 3 where he doesn't do it for a while. So hopefully that's what that is. And again, just more of a big picture thing from the Rams want to go into Baltimore and get the heck out of there before Baltimore figures it out. Right. Like, it's just, It's weird. It's weird seeing them like this, where the record is bad, where the defense is bad, where it seems like they're kind of trying to figure it out too. That, when the Rams schedule came out at the beginning of the year, through their first 6 weeks, you thought, okay, you got to go to Philadelphia, you got to go to Baltimore. That's 2 really tough assignments. Well, they went into Philadelphia and should have won that game, and now you get the chance to go to Baltimore and catch them possibly without Lamar Jackson, with a defense that's struggling. And like you mentioned, the Ravens have a bye next week. The Rams have a bye the following week. They go to London to play the Jags next week. So they're going to stay in the East Coast. They're just going to stay over there and jump over. So the last thing you want to do is be sitting there, on back-to-back losses, going to play a Jacksonville team that turns out they're a lot better than I think a lot of people thought they were going to be.
Yeah, it feels like the Ravens and Jaguars did like Freaky Friday, and they swapped over, and like the Jaguars took all the Ravens' powers and gave all their bad luck to the Ravens. So that's what it feels like. Yeah, the Rams getting a little taste of Camden Yards after this game, which will be exciting. Then you jump over to going abroad, which is fun. But I think one area I'm looking at specifically is the linebacker position, because Trenton Simpson, who they drafted out of Clemson a couple of years ago, again, with Owe being traded, Simpson played a lot of outside linebacker in college at Clemson, and he was one of the Ravens' highest graded defenders in that area. I think that's a place where he could see a lot more run, because they didn't bring in another pass rusher. They brought in another safety. So you're going to have to try to find guys that can take over Owe's snaps. And even though John Harbaugh, kind of like what Sean McVay talked about, you mentioned in the first part of the show with what the Rams could do, the Ravens, John Harbaugh kind of said the same thing. Like, yeah, we might go after another pass rusher. We'll see how it all unfolds. So for now, you got to go with what you have. And Trenton Simpson could be a guy that is on the outside trying to get pressure on Matthew Stafford. But that does leave, if Trenton Simpson's over there, maybe another opening at the inside linebacker position. And Teddy Buchanan, who was their 4th-round rookie out of Cal, he now has green dot responsibilities because Roquan Smith, I don't believe he'll play in this game. Maybe he can make a miraculous recovery, but I think they're going to try to hold a lot of these guys out just to recover them during the bye week. So the Rams could be facing, again, a very weak Ravens team in terms of guys not available. But I'm looking to see that inside linebacker group of the Ravens, and maybe even that safety group, try to defend these running backs and tight ends out of the backfield from the Rams. That's been an area the Ravens have struggled at for a handful of years. And we saw Dalton Schultz last week carve up the Ravens defense. And, other guys were getting involved from Houston. So I think that that's really important. And honestly, one guy at this point, Travis, and this is the beauty of the network, because I can kind of ask you for the scouting report. Jake Hummel is now on the Baltimore Ravens, and he is somebody that's more known as a special teams guy out. He had the block punt against Cleveland in week 2. That's his bread and butter. Is there any shot that Jake Hummel could maybe fill a bigger role this week for the Ravens, and they would feel confident about that? Or are you more so just putting them on the special teams?
Let's put it to you this way, Kevin, that they chose Troy Reeder instead, I think tells you what they thought about Jake Hummel. So, yeah, I don't know if that's a winning combination for anybody. I'll give you a little bit of good news. If you're talking about worried about getting taken advantage of by some tight ends and running backs, that's not really where the Rams try to butter their bread, really, is, that Tyler Higbee didn't play last week. Davis Allen has kind of been hit and miss. It's not really somebody that they've unlocked. The first pick that the Rams had in the draft, their 2nd-round pick out of Oregon, Terrence Ferguson, he finally caught his first pass of the season last week. It was his first target of the season. He'd been inactive a couple of games. They really hadn't used him at all. That's the one thing the Rams have never really unlocked with the Sean McVay offense, is using the tight ends regularly. There's been some moments where Higbee's been pretty good. There was a moment or two where Gerald Everett, a few years ago was pretty good, but they like to throw the ball to the wide receivers. They're going to feed Puka over and over and over again. They're going to find Devontae Adams a lot, and the tight ends are used more as offensive linemen than they are as pass catching threats. Now, Kyron Williams did catch a touchdown pass last week. They will throw it to him occasionally. Blake Corum had a big drop last week, so I don't know if they're going to be dying to throw it to him again. But Puka and Adams are the guys that get the lion's share of the targets there, that they really don't unleash the tight ends like that. The way that I know a lot of Rams fans would like to see them do, specifically going and drafting Ferguson, who's a really good athlete, but the Rams use those guys to block more than they do to catch passes. So he's got to get a little bigger, a little stronger before they use him more.
Yeah, I'm excited. I think that Nate Wiggins versus Puka, or wherever, like seeing top on top, best on best, we'll probably see some Nate on Devontae. Like, Nate's been really, really good. One of the lone bright spots on this Ravens defense so far this season. I also assume that Marlon Humphrey is not going to play in this game. So Jair Alexander, who's been out of the lineup as he just kind of tries to recover his conditioning. He missed almost all the training camp with an injury, played in Buffalo in week 1, looked terrible. The Ravens held him out for 3 straight weeks, came back last week for a little bit. Maybe Jair can step up to the plate and maybe help out the Ravens in that area, but they are very weak there. But I think, Travis, where this game is going to be won and lost is in the trenches. The Ravens offensive line has looked abysmal this season, and you're going up against the Rams defense that's top 10 in terms of yards per attempt in both rushing and passing. And Ronnie Stanley, again, he's banged up right now. Even Joe Noteboom, who I know is an old friend over there in Los Angeles, he is also banged up. And I know Rams fans might be rubbing their hands together like, oh, we might get to face Joe Noteboom this week.
Yeah, it's funny. I am one of the last remaining people in the Rams universe that was not super down on Joe Noteboom. I was. And like I said, you're going to have to look high and low to find people on my side of this. I thought he was okay. I thought that, you don't want him to have to play 17 games for you. He's not that sort of guy. But if you need to spell a guy, if you need a swing tackle, then Joe Noteboom can certainly fill that role. They won the Super Bowl the year, and Joe Noteboom, I think, started 4 or 5 games down the stretch for him. So he's capable of doing it. It's just he's an inconsistent player. So yeah, I was one of the few people like, if there's a way to keep him, that's fine. But I was kind of on an island there.
Yeah, unfortunately, he did not look great in that Texans game,
No.
filling in for Ronnie Stanley. I think he had 4 whiffs or something along those lines in the first half alone in that game. So it's not great. So you might have to turn to rookie Carson Vincent potentially if both Ronnie and Joe Noteboom can't go. The guard position's been abysmal for the Ravens this year with Andrew Voorhees and Daniel Falele. Even Tyler Linderbaum hasn't looked like himself, and that might be product of the play around him because it's just not good. Even Roger Rosengarten, he has regressed. And as I mentioned, he's on the injury report. And yeah, not a great week if you're the Ravens offensive line to go up against a Rams D line that has the players that they do. I mean, that's an area I'm looking at, as well as the other side too, because if the Ravens just let Matthew Stafford sit back there and go through his reads, he's going to pick this defense apart.
Yeah, it's funny. It's kind of gotten lost in the sauce a little bit because the Rams have been so weird in 2 of their, and quite frankly, the game they won against Indianapolis, if not for Mitchell, dropping the ball at the 1 yard line, which apparently is a thing we're doing in the NFL now.
Right.
The Rams probably lose that game too. Stafford's been really, really good, like really good in the last couple of weeks. So if he has time, he's going to do Matthew Stafford kind of things. And then kind of conversely, like you mentioned, Byron Young has 5 sacks already. He's been really, really good. And he's taken advantage of what he needed to take advantage of. Jared Verse is getting doubled a lot. Jared Verse is the guy that everybody is paying attention to. He's the guy that, the game plan is, how do you keep number 8 from blowing up your whole game? And the other players have taken advantage of, notably Young. And Verse is still getting his. He's still making a bunch of really good plays week in and week out. I'd like to see him get a little bit more disciplined, a little bit more of that edge control that he loses sometimes just because he's so aggressive. But that Rams front can go get it. But if they can get the ball out quick, it might not matter.
Yeah, here's the thing. If Lamar doesn't play and Cooper Rush is in there, Lamar's the best in the league, or at least one of them. In my opinion, he's the best at evading sacks, propping up that O-line play. Cooper Rush, he's not going to do that.
So different.
You get to Cooper Rush, and he's going down first try, most likely. So that's an area they're certainly missing. And coming up in the final part of the show, we're going to dive into how each team can win this game and get back on track. So be sure to stay tuned for that. We have a lot coming your way here on this Crossover Thursday edition of both Locked On Ravens and Locked On Rams. First, this show is brought to you by Gametime. And the NFL season is back. And honestly, there's nothing better than being in the stadium surrounded by fans cheering on your team. But let's be honest, getting tickets can be a hassle between queues, login screens, and prices jumping at checkout. It's frustrating. That's why I use Gametime, the app that gives the advantage back to fans. Gametime's fast, easy, and backed by the Gametime guarantee. You'll always get 100% authentic tickets delivered on time and at the best price. Plus, all fees are included, so the price you see is the price you pay. Now, I pulled up Gametime, and in just a couple taps, I saw amazing deals. I'm talking about your favorite NFL games as low as $100. The app made it super simple. I could even see the exact view from my seat before buying. I love zone deals, too. You pick the section, and Gametime picks a seat, and you could save big. Honestly, it's faster, it's cheaper, and less stressful than any other way I've bought tickets. So download the Gametime app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download Gametime today. And the show is brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL season's here, and FanDuel has an offer you don't want to miss. Right now, new customers can bet just $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win. That's right. Pick a bet, put down $5, and if it hits, you'll unlock $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Now, I love how FanDuel gives me so many ways to play. I've built parlays, tried player props, and even followed the live lines during games. It makes watching football even more exciting when you've got a little something riding on the action. Whether you're a casual fan or love diving into the stats, FanDuel makes the game day experience so much better. And right now over on FanDuel for this Ravens and Rams Week 6 matchup, the Ravens, they are the home underdogs here. The Rams currently favored 7.5 points. Right now, 7.5-point favorites are the Rams on the road. So maybe you like the Ravens as the home underdog, or maybe you like the Rams as the road favorite. Either way, you got to get over to FanDuel. So what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com to download the FanDuel app today and get started. Continuing on Locked On Ravens and Locked On Rams, Kevin Oestreicher and Travis Rogers breaking everything down as the Ravens and Rams gear up for a big Week 6 matchup. Want to remind everyone again, today's episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. Download the Prize Picks app today. Use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. All right, Travis, the Rams looking to get back on track again, suffered a heartbreaker against San Francisco. What do they have to do to win this game against the Ravens?
Not do dumb stuff, right? Like it's as simple as that. Like do the basics and do them reasonably well. And the Rams are catching a break. The schedule gods have been favorable to them so far that you're likely to catch, a team not only without their starting quarterback, but without an MVP caliber quarterback. That's a pretty nice break. You get a chance to redeem yourself after a week. You get a chance to do all of these different things. So they need to take advantage of it. I'm hearing you do the FanDuel spot right there. That line seems crazy to me for the simple reason that it was the same line last week against San Francisco. They were playing a bunch of backups too. And I'm like, it just doesn't make any sense to me. The Rams have been very unrammy. It's a word I've used on Locked On Rams a lot. Like, but very rarely this is Sean McVay's 9th season as the head coach of the Rams. And I could count on one hand in those years where I have said, what is he doing? Like, and it's been a wonderful treat to have a coach that is just really highly competent, that doesn't do a bunch of head scratching things. There's been some head scratching things so far this season. The fourth down play against San Francisco, I didn't mind the decision to go for it. I thought that was the right decision. I thought the play call was weird. He even said as much afterwards. The decision to run behind your fourth guard in Philadelphia with the game on the line, that was a weird decision. There's been some stuff that is very unlike them. So I think if they execute the basics, if they stick to the plan, if they don't make any catastrophic mistakes, again, fumbling on the 1 yard line with the go-ahead touchdown, 3 feet away, it's not like they have systemic problems. They have little dumb things that they need to clean up.
Yeah, on the Ravens side of things, do everything different than you did in Week 5. The game, I say this, Trav, I've said it all week. The game was 44-10. It didn't even feel that close. It was awful the entire game, and it's crazy because you look at how the first quarter went, and Houston was only up 7-3, and then after that, Houston put up a 17 spot in the second quarter, and you're like, all right, well, here we go again. I truly think for the Ravens to win, they have to do what when they're fully healthy, I think other teams have to do to them. And that's just kind of slop the game up. Like, make this an ugly game and win ugly. Don't let the offense of the Rams stay on the field. What's the best way to keep a high-powered offense from scoring? You don't let them touch the football. And you have these 10, 11, like, go back to the Greg Roman days early in Baltimore, where they take up like 13 minutes of clock on one drive. Like, that's what you have to do here, because you don't want Matthew Stafford and this Rams offense touching the ball. And that, to me, is, I think, the big thing. You also have to establish your run game this time around. The Texans were not as good of a run defense as the Rams are, and the Texans still held the Ravens. Derrick Henry, 15 carries for just 33 yards on the day, because, again, there was no threat. And the offensive line didn't get any push. I mean, the offensive line has to do something. The problem is, like we talked about, they're going up against the God Squad here in this Rams defensive line, which has so many good players on it. So if you can establish the run, it allows those guys to pin their ears back and rush Cooper Rush and get after the quarterback, which is a really tough thing. So they just need to slop this game up and win like 13-12, like some disgusting, maybe scoregami score that's never been seen before. You just got to win ugly. I think that's what they have to do here.
Yeah, look, the Derrick Henry thing is fascinating. I do my daily radio show on ESPN Los Angeles, and my co-host is former Rams Super Bowl champ DeMarco Farr, and we were talking about Derrick Henry, and he said something that really kind of resonated with me. He goes, look, not that it's ever easy to play against a player like Derrick Henry, but it gets so much easier without Lamar Jackson, because you can just commit all of your resources to stopping Derrick Henry. And with Lamar Jackson, you always have to have a guy, if not two guys, fully committed to dealing with Lamar Jackson. It leaves a lot of space. And Cooper Rush is certainly not going to do that. I'm optimistic for the Rams, but you know this as well as anybody. These games are never easy. They're never lopsided when you think they might be. They always feel close. The Rams tend to play close games and games where maybe they shouldn't. So I think the Rams probably escape with a narrow victory, but I don't think it's going to be Texans-like. I think it might be one of those muck-it-up games that happens that the Rams are on the right side of, but I don't think that they're just going to walk the ball up and down the field on them.
Yeah, the Ravens haven't shown me anything this season to give me confidence that they can beat a team like this right now. Whether it be on-field play, coaching, off-field vibes. Zach Orr, the defensive coordinator, is probably coaching for his job this week. And, people I went on a show earlier this week, and the host described it as his 4th and 8 for Zach Orr as the defensive coordinator of the Ravens right now. He has to have a big thing because the bye week is the perfect time to install some new things. You don't have to prep for an opponent. So I probably have it. I have it like 29-20 Rams. I mean, I'm hoping this team can put up 20 points. I'm not sure. And I'm hoping they can give up less than 37. So I guess we're little steps, but even still, 1-5 going into the bye week, not a good place to be if you're the Ravens. Travis, I appreciate you. Thank you so much. Thank you to everybody who watched and listened today to both Locked On Ravens and Locked On Rams. Of course, we'll be back here rounding out the week and giving you all the daily Rams and Ravens coverage. And of course, we'll be back here after the game as well, breaking it all down. So be sure to hit the like and subscribe button in video form. Follow along in audio form. For Travis Rogers, I am Kevin Oestreicher, and we'll see you right back here soon on Locked On Ravens and Locked On Rams.